Hello. Welcome to, I guess, my guide on how to make realistic lighting. So, I have my sample room, my test room. It's very dark right now, but it's basically just this from the outside. So we have a couple of natural light sources, and then we have an actual entrance to the room. Obviously, I've gone ahead and I've probed this. If you don't know how to use reflection probes or what they do, I recommend that before you watch this, because this is an advanced lighting tutorial, that you go and watch just any sort of guide on what a cube map, or preferably a tutorial on how to use reflection probes in the mod tools, because it's very important that you learn what these are, what they do, and how they work, because it's crucial to getting anything that's half decent looking. Now, the first thing that we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to do an Omni Light. We're going to do an Omni Light. Now, an Omni Light is a light that goes out in every direction. So, I've got my emissive light. Even though it's not very bright right now, we got an emissive light, right? We have your light bulb. You can't see it very well, so we'll rebuild the lighting. And you don't have to rebuild the lighting every time you put a new thing in your scene, because if you have a complex map that's like 50 or 60 probes, it's going to take you, depending on your computer, anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes to recompile it every single time. Now that sounds scary, but it just means that you got to make best use of your time. So we're going to put our light in, and we're going to line it up with our light so that it's emitting. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that this is very, very bright. So the first thing we're going to do is turn off the shadow map. This is very important because this will actually allow us to generate shadows. If I texture the top of this, right, and I turn back on no shadow map, you can see the light is coming through ever so slightly. But turn it off, there you go. It basically means that this light is going to cast shadows. That's all it means. Stops is how bright the light is. So I'm going to reduce it for the moment to 4. And there you go. We have a nice, mildly bright light. As you can see, now that we have a light in the scene, the ambience of the room is actually increased because of the reflection probe. Now this room would be very, very bright if I had the map set to like daytime, but I feel like having the map set at night, where we have ample opportunity for lighting and where we require the most amount of lighting, it's the best way to show you how we actually go about making nice looking lights. Now, as you can see, this doesn't even reach the floor, right? We need to increase the radius. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it to about 152. And now you can see that it's hitting everything. And it looks really, really ugly. It looks really bad. This is not how a light looks in real life. And this is because the light is hitting everything with this circle shape. Not good. And also, it's not occluding until the very, very edge. So, if you look here, see this circle? See this circle? That's where your light starts falling off. And falling off is basically the point where your light doesn't have any resistance. This is where it starts fading out. Now we want to reduce this. We want to reduce this dramatically. You can see this better if I just turn off fall off, right? Because the light has 2 edges. Right, technically, fall off enables here, but it doesn't fade out very fast, or it doesn't fade out as much until it gets to this outer edge. So we can reduce this by reducing the far edge, and if we make it like 0.5, you can see immediately that these windows here, and just everything in the room in general, is much softer in terms of its lighting. We could even make this 0 so that it's always fading. And you'll see that the light's a lot dimmer, but it makes up for it. because of how the light's now falling off, and it's a nice gradual fade rather than the same amount of light just emitting outwards. Now we're going to rebuild our lighting, right? And you can see that the ambience of the room has now decreased because there is less light since the last time we compiled. Now, if you look at the color of the light, it does not look quite right, does it? That's because if you look at any light in real life, unless you're looking like any sort of light bulb that's like this one, right? This sort of older light bulb, it's not going to be white. We're going to change the color of this. Now, you don't want anything too yellow. You don't want anything like this, because now the light is just going to look like it's a yellow light. Obviously, unless you want a yellow light. Like, I could turn this into a rave by just making it red. And this would look great if you're doing sort of like, if it's like an alert light. We want this to be a natural looking light. So you sort of go like this yellowish, but not completely yellow, sort of just desaturated and a little bit darker, sort of off-white, more like a beige, and you'll get this sort of nice, natural looking white light, I guess. You can see that this is now a nice looking light, and it doesn't emit very much. So we're just going to increase the stops. The darker you make the color, the less light it's going to emit, as a general rule of thumb. If I made this light completely black, it's not going to emit anything. We can just rebuild our lighting, and you can see that we have this nice sort of thing. Now, if you're worried about shadows on your light source, like this, and because this is a bulb, we're just going to go to the model, check no shadow. There you go. If we were to do a long light, like this, and we're going to move this over, and you can see that it's not really doing much. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a spotlight to it. Now, there's kind of two ways of doing spotlights, and I'll show you. So you can do a method where you use an Omni Light, but this is very resource consuming. You can use an Omni Light and you can increase the length of it using the bulb length. Make it like 32 long. It'll change the length of your bulb, but we don't want that. We're going to make this a spotlight. And conveniently, this light is facing downwards, so we don't have to rotate it at all. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. We can move the light up, right? And depending on how wide we want this light to be, the higher or lower we make it, because we're going to be doing the same thing either way. So I can make this nice and low and it'll be a really wide light. I'll reduce the stops just for the sake of my eyeballs. We'll increase the radius to like 132. This way it's through the floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into your viewer and you can look where the edges of the light are. And we are going to increase the angle, the FOV of the light. This angle here is the FOV of the light. Now what we're going to do is going to make it so this is going out like that. It's going out of the light. So 150 looks about right. Now as you can see, it's not actually emitting any light, and this is because it is actually inside the light. It's casting it on the top because this model casts shadows. So what's the obvious solution? No, it's not to turn off the shadow. It is to increase the cut on of the light. So what is cut on? Cut on is simply how much we want to cut from the light source to where it starts. The distance we want from where the light is placed to where it starts. That is your cut on. I'm going to make this 7.75 because you can see it starts on the inside of the light and it lights up this in here. And it looks nice. It looks nice and good. Working out your cut on first is really nice because then you can actually see sort of this flat plane and it allows you to line up where you want it to be a lot easier. So I'm going to increase this to like 152 or 151.5, and you can see that we have just a little bit. It's basically on the cusp of where the light starts and ends. Now this light is too round, so if you're doing a square light like this, just set your roundness to 0.1. The thing that we want to do now, like, oh nice, it's really square, it's way too big for this light. So how do we rectify this? By changing the Super Ellipse. So the Super Ellipse is basically where first number is this inner circle, last number is this outer circle. We never want this to be 1, 1, because as you can see, the light just starts. If we have it at 0.75, it's gradual. It's what you want. You want this nice sort of fade. Fades are what good lighting is all about. So we can reduce this. If we make this, say, 0.2, hey look, it's nice. It fits nicely within our circle. If we make this 0.25, it fits nicely within our light. As you can see, we now have a more realistic looking shape for this light. Now again, you can see that this occludes too much, and it's also a white light. We don't like white lights here, so we're going to make this the same color as the other one, because it's a more realistic looking shade. And if we really wanted to, we can make it something lighter. Make it like this. Like if you really want it to look white, you just have to make it a little bit off, because you're never going to really find natural looking white lighting. I actually don't like how little it fades on the edge, so I'm going to reduce this a little bit more, 0.15, more like a third. As you can see, it's like more gradual. It looks nicer. And at the same time, we're going to reduce our far edge. Looks a lot nicer. It looks more natural. It looks more like what a light does in real life. If we do it again, you can see it's nice. That's essentially all you really need to know about advanced lighting. Basically, experiment with your super ellipses, experiment with your fades, experiment with your far edges. Generally just have fun. Just play with the lighting. Make it look interesting. Don't leave it as default, because it's gonna look terrible. And make sure you use reflection probes. Just make sure you use reflection probes before you do anything. Once you have your area looking nice, before you do anything, before you start any lighting, make sure you have your reflection probes. Build that lighting. Otherwise, your unbuilt lighting is not going to be accurate to what you are doing. So look, this looks nice, right? Look how terrible this looks now. This looks awful. This wall, it doesn't have the same color consistency as this. These walls all look different. They all have different shades. So these two look like they're connected. These two look like they're connected, but they don't look connected to each other. So make sure that when you start doing your lighting, you have your reflection probe sorted out. That's the most important thing. Thank you for watching. I'll put this prefab up with the thread for this video, and I hope to see some good lighting coming from new mappers, because this is sort of what makes the difference. Use reflection probes too. It's very important. Anyway, thanks for watching. Enjoy your evenings.